A New York City jury on Tuesday delivered a blow to former President Donald Trump's business empire, finding the company, Trump Organization, guilty of fraud amidst 17 charges. So that is one of the 17 that the Trump Organization was found guilty of. Dang. The Washington Post is reporting that the real estate, hospitality, and golf resort operation headquartered at Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue faces the possibility of a $1.6 million fine at a sentencing scheduled January 13th. New York Supreme Court jurors began deliberations Monday about that. Okay, so the company was charged with scheme to defraud, conspiracy, criminal tax fraud, and falsifying business records. Well, wait, hold on here. Wait a minute. That's a lot of charges. 17 counts. Now, they found when they went through years of Trump Organization payroll and expense reports, showed that executives received different perks like luxury apartments, Mercedes-Benzes, ooh, very nice, while purposely concealing them from tax authorities. So, look, Donald Trump, we'll get to him in a little bit later. Remember, Donald Trump thinks paying your taxes makes you a sucker. And apparently, that was the company ethos as well. So, take that for what it is. Now, this was led by ex-CFO Weisselberg, who in August pleaded guilty to 15 counts, including tax fraud, conspiracy, and grand larceny. In exchange for a pretty sweet plea deal, however, he agreed to testify against the company. He was originally facing about 15 years in prison. With his cooperation, he got it knocked down to 5 months. In his testimony, Weisselberg detailed how he and the company's comptroller, Jeffrey McConney, schemed to cheat state and federal tax authorities beginning in 2005 and lasting more than a decade. Fun. Weisselberg used the company to cover major personal expenses like rent for a luxury apartment on the Hudson River, Mercedes-Benz leases for himself and his wife, and private school tuition for his grandchildren. In some instances, he paid the company back for his personal expenses, which allowed him to use pre-tax compensation illegally. Other expenses were paid for by the company but not reported as taxable income as required by tax laws. McConney, who also admitted in his testimony to committing crimes, was granted immunity under New York law because he was called by prosecutors as a grand jury witness in the case. Prosecutors argued the conduct of Weisselberg and McConney made the company criminally liable. Two Trump Organization entities, the Trump Corporation and the Trump Payroll Corporation, were both on trial and were found guilty. All charges. So that's Washington Post. All charges. All charges. So now, Assistant Manhattan DA Joshua Steinglass had summed it up pretty nicely, saying the company had, quote, cultivated a culture of fraud and deception, of lavishing illicit perks to entice its most senior executives, of falsifying tax reporting documents to mask the true compensation they paid those executives. It also accused the company of scapegoating its accountants for not being vigilant enough to sniff out their malfeasance. Well, I mean, if you're a Trump Organization accountant and you start noticing these shady dealings, what are you going to do? Hey, this looks messed up. And then you know what's going to happen to you? Gone. Out the door. Sorry, you got to go, son. We have no room for anyone who is actually honest. Get out. And then, on the way out,
you idiot,
that's what they'll say to him. How dare you ruin our grift or attempt to ruin our... No. Go, get.
Bitch, move it along.
Go. You're out of here. You're fired. So, in fact, if Trump was involved...
you're fired.
There you go. So, anyway, I know. I don't remember myself. All right. So, that said, let's get to Trump. Now, Trump wasn't technically on trial, but he kind of was. Look, it's his company, and because the people at the top of the company set the company culture. You know, the fish rots from the head down, as they say. So, look, Donald Trump, we know he's a con man, he's a tax cheat, he's a fraudster, and the company culture that he cultivated is a reflection of himself. I think we can all agree that the company culture is reflective of the people who run it. So, that said, Trump denies having any knowledge of what his people were doing. So that creates a situation of either he is too stupid to know what's going on in his own company, which, by the way, is a defense I hear a lot from people who are corrupt. Well, what do you mean? There's gambling in this establishment? I had no idea. No idea whatsoever what any of the people that, at my company were doing. What were you doing then? You obviously weren't running the company. And that also means you obviously aren't a very smart and savvy businessman, are you? If you don't even know that your company is perpetrating massive amounts of tax fraud, as well as other things. Tremendous things, the greatest things. Come on. So either way, it looks really bad for Donald Trump. So, again, he claims, no. Paying our taxes, of course we pay our taxes. I mean, you're a moron if you pay your taxes. But, we pay our taxes and we didn't do any fraud. What are you talking about? Trump's always paid their debts. Except when they don't. They never do. They never pay anyone. They literally just go, declare bankruptcy. Trump does. He's done it like 7 times. And he gets away with everything. Just walks away. They even ripped off Medicare by not having to pay Medicare taxes. That's another thing. So if you're a Trump voter, you're on Medicare, guess what? Donald Trump ripped you off. Ripped off the program. If you actually care about that, well, you should be livid. But as I said before, there's no way that Donald Trump didn't know anything about this. And again, he might be, look, there's no might here. Yeah, he's dumb. He's dumb enough to not know the particulars of what Weisselberg and McConney were able to do with the scheme because, again, he's not a very smart person. not very intelligent, not a very stable genius.
I'm cognitively there.
But he's not cognitively there enough to know what his people are doing in his own company. I think while he's not smart enough to grasp how it was done, he knew that it was being done, and he was absolutely fine with it. Donald Trump, as I said, hates paying anybody, much less the government, and the DAs were very quick to point out how absurd his argument is that he was just an innocent bystander who was betrayed by his longtime CFO. District Attorney Joshua Steinglass said during a summation, quote, "The whole narrative that Donald Trump was blissfully ignorant was just not real." And look, his lawyers opened it up by making the charge that Trump had been betrayed. On Friday, New York Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchan ruled the Trump Organization's lawyers had opened this door, discussing whether Trump was aware by telling jurors that Weisselberg had betrayed the Trump company. Quote, "The fact that this was sanctioned and a practice that was known to Mr. Trump directly rebuts that incorrect narrative," Steinglass argued in a discussion that unfortunately took place outside of the presence of the jury. There's more. The jury heard that Trump agreed on a whim to pay the private school tuition for Weisselberg's grandkids and signed a lease for a Manhattan apartment to shorten the executive's commute. He also personally signed his employees' bonus checks at Christmas time, so that they would know where the money was coming from and would properly thank him. Because that is Donald Trump for you. And of course, initialed a memo reducing the salary of another top executive, which prosecutors suggest he knew all along about the fraudulent scheme. Again, wait, he reduced the salary? Yeah, you reduce the salary and then give the perks on the side so that these executives pay less in taxes. That is how you do tax fraud. That said, let's get to the negatives here, Okay? So, look, New York DA Alvin Bragg decided not to indict Donald Trump in this case. That drives me crazy. Donald Trump is a well-known fraudster. And still, you have Bragg not having enough cojones, not enough balls,
testicles,
okay, to take him on. Alvin Bragg, what are you afraid of? You had two previous lawyers that were working on a fraud case against Donald Trump, saying, we've got him. He is dead to rights. We know he is a criminal. We've got the proof. We've got the evidence. And Alvin Bragg says, no. Now they say, his office is, but we're still working on it. Are you, though? Are you? Are you working very hard? And look, here's why I'm disappointed by this, all right? Look, Trump was allowed to use a fall guy, Weisselberg in this case, to avoid actually taking any responsibility. That fall guy is getting 5 months in prison. 5 months. After getting all of those perks worth millions and millions of dollars. Hey, that is a pretty sweet deal for Weisselberg, who took all the blame. Again, he said, no, Donald Trump didn't have anything to do with it, as in he protected Trump by saying this was all me. He had nothing to do with it. I did this for myself, and then allowing the Trump organization and Donald Trump himself to throw him under the bus. And all of that for approximately $1.7 million potential fine. That is a drop in the bucket at best. And look, a felony conviction, according to the Washington Post, who takes a very cheery view, which I don't agree with on this, says, well, it couldn't impact the Trump organization's ability to do business or obtain loans and contracts. Who in New York City is dumb enough to loan the Trump organization any money? Nobody. Nobody is dumb enough, stupid enough to loan Donald Trump money. They know they're not going to get paid back. The only people who are involved are either criminal elements or, in the case of where a lot of Trump's money has been coming from, foreign governments, Russians, the Saudis, people who might want to have a little bit of influence in case Donald Trump wins in 2024. And by the way, who also had influence during his presidency, his first term. So, yeah, understand that this is where he would get the majority of his money. So this doesn't hurt him really all that much. $1.6 to $1.7 million fine? Really? No. And by the way, Trump also never pays his bills. So, an actual case that could hurt him and his business, at least for a significant amount of money, is the one that's being brought by Letitia James, which accuses Trump, 3 of his adult children, and ex-CFO Alan Weisselberg of manipulating the valuations of their properties to get better terms on loans, insurance policies, and to get tax breaks. That civil suit, which again is only a civil suit, seeks to recover about $250 million. $250 million, and has the potential to cripple the Trump organization's ability to do business in the state. So that, a little bit more meaningful, a bigger fine. That said, if you think Donald Trump's going to jail, at least for these things, for the obvious defrauding of the government, you might want to wait. There's nothing to celebrate here, okay? Screwing over taxpayers, understand, rich people screwing over the government, the taxpayers, that's standard fare for rich people. Just saying. Okay? They don't, you don't understand the rich and powerful if you think that they actually face accountability and justice in this country. The only way that they ever do is when they actually rip off other rich people. Rich people run this country. And so, again, it's not surprising to see the Trump organization itself and Trump get away with very little consequences for doing, again, fraud. And I would say massive fraud.